everyone, welcome back to the Incredible India podcast series. I am Sam, and joining me is our expert Taylor.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here for this one.
So today we are taking a deep dive into something that is, frankly, just completely mind-blowing. We are talking about an extraordinary intersection of cinematic spectacle and, ancient reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want you to just imagine for a second standing in front of a tower that rises 66 meters into the sky, and it dominates this completely flat landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And it is built entirely out of these massive interlocking blocks of solid granite.
Right, and no mortar, just the stone.
Exactly, no mortar. And then imagine that this was constructed over 1,000 years ago, way before the invention of hydraulic cranes or modern machinery. And it was built by an empire that commanded not just the land, but an entire ocean. So today we are looking at the real-world titans behind the pop culture phenomenon of Ponniyin Selvan.
Which is, such a fascinating entry point for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Because, for anyone who might not be familiar, Ponniyin Selvan started out as Kalki's legendary Tamil historical novel.
Right.
And then recently, in 2022 and 2023, the director Mani Ratnam adapted it into this massive two-part cinematic epic.
Yeah.
And it just absolutely exploded globally.
It was everywhere.
Yeah, it introduced this incredibly rich civilization to international audiences. And what happened was it sparks this huge heritage travel craze, especially among diaspora communities who, they watched it and wanted to actually see where this story happened.
Right, because watching those films, it feels exactly like watching a big-budget fantasy epic. You see these towering stone structures, these sweeping royal courts, these unbelievable naval fleets. And usually, when the credits roll on a movie like that, you just assume it's all CGI.
Oh, for sure.
You think, oh, it was rendered on a server somewhere in California. But with the Cholas, the actual empire that inspired all of this, you can literally buy a plane ticket, walk right up to the castle, and touch the stone. It is not a myth. It is a living, breathing reality.
It really is.
Yeah.
The physical evidence of their power is still standing right there in Tamil Nadu.
Mm-hmm.
And it is staggering to see in person. We were talking about the Chola dynasty, right? So 1,000 years ago, they ruled from this river delta in southern India. But they were not, just some minor regional kingdom.
Far from it.
Yeah, they were an unparalleled maritime power. They dictated the geopolitics of southern India, Sri Lanka, the Maldives, and stretched their influence far across the ocean. The political intrigue, the naval ambition, the actual characters you see on the screen, like Raja Chola and Rajendra Chola, they were real living figures who actively shaped the history of Asia.
And their legacy, it went completely global, right? It didn't just stay within the borders of India.
Oh, not at all. No, their cultural footprint is everywhere today, particularly in their art. The Chola artisans, they perfected the creation of these exquisite bronze sculptures. And they did this 1,000 years ago using what's called the lost wax casting method.
Which is such a complex process.
It really is. They would carve these incredibly intricate figures entirely in wax first. Then they would encase that wax in a clay mold. Then they fire it, melt the wax out so it's hollow, and finally pour in molten bronze. And the world-famous Nataraja, the image of the dancing Shiva surrounded by that ring of fire.
Yeah, everyone knows that image.
Right, that was perfected by the Cholas. It is arguably one of the most recognizable pieces of art on the planet today.
Which is just wild to think about, because you can walk into these highly prestigious global institutions today, like the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York or the Ashmolean in Oxford, and you will literally find these ancient Chola bronzes sitting right there in glass cases.
Yeah.
You're looking directly at the aesthetic sensibilities of an 11th century royal court. But I really want to focus on the architecture for a bit, specifically these 3 sites that are called the Great Living Chola Temples. They are UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Tamil Nadu. But I have to ask, what is the actual distinction between a historical ruin and a living temple?
That is a great question, and it is a profound difference. It completely changes how you experience the space.
Right.
When you visit the monuments of most ancient empires, think of the Colosseum in Rome or Machu Picchu in Peru.
Right.
You are walking through a ruin. The original purpose of that building has ceased. It basically belongs entirely to the past now. But these 3 Chola temples, they are actively worshipped in today, every single day.
Wow.
Yeah, the spaces are completely alive with the exact same devotional practices that they were built for 10 centuries ago. So you have the smell of camphor burning, the ringing of bells, the chanting of priests. You're literally stepping into a continuum that connects the ancient world directly to modern life.
You are literally sharing space with history. It's not just a museum.
Precisely. It is a living tradition.
Okay, so to really understand the absolute peak of this Chola dominance, we need to look at the ultimate architectural flex, basically. The greatest achievement of their most famous king, Raja Chola I. So we are heading to the heart of the empire, to the Brihadiswara Temple in Thanjavur.
Yes, the Brihadiswara, often just called Big Temple by locals, because, well, it is massive, and it is a statement of absolute uncontested power. It was built between 1003 and 1010 AD.
Wait, just 7 years?
Just 7 years.
That pace is just mind-boggling for the 11th century.
It really is. 7 years to build what was, at the time, the tallest building in India. The main tower, which is known as the Vimana, rises 66 meters into the sky, and it is built entirely of interlocking granite blocks. There's absolutely no binding mortar used at all.
So it's just gravity.
Basically, yeah. The sheer weight of the stones holds the entire structure together, and it dominates this flat Kaveri delta landscape.
Yeah.
It has this sort of verticality and this extreme confidence that feels almost impossible for its era.
And what blows my mind is that this isn't just a really big building, it's practically a giant astronomical instrument.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was reading that this temple was designed with such incredible precision regarding the Earth's axial tilt and the sun's seasonal path that its shadow never touches the ground at noon during any part of the year.
The geometry required to actually achieve that is stunning. The temple's tiered pyramidal structure is designed so that the shadow falls entirely on its own base. It never hits the courtyard floor at noon. And every dimension of the building follows these strict mathematical relationships that are encoded in what is called the Agamic tradition. These were these ancient, highly complex architectural texts that dictated exactly how to align earthly structures with cosmic geometry. It perfectly expresses the vision of Raja Chola I because he was, simultaneously the most powerful military commander in the region, but also a deeply devout Shaivite.
Meaning his entire spiritual universe centered on the worship of the god Shiva.
Exactly. Everything he built was an offering.
And the art inside is just as staggering as the outside. Deep inside the temple, there is a circumambulatory passage. And for anyone listening who hasn't been in a Hindu temple, that is the narrow, often very dark hallway where devotees walk in circles around the inner sanctum as a form of worship.
Right. It's a very intimate space.
Yeah, and hidden in that passageway are these 11th century Chola frescoes. I mean, they are 10 centuries old, historically lit only by flickering oil lamps, and the colors still just blaze on the walls.
Those frescoes are incredibly crucial for art historians because they form a direct artistic link to the famous 4th to 6th century Ajanta cave paintings over in western India. They represent this major bridge in the story of ancient Indian art. They depict Shiva in these poses of just extraordinary grace. And the artists, whose names are completely lost to time, sadly, they had a mastery of color and proportion that remains completely intact today.
Plus, if you visit Thanjavur today, you get this incredible layered history in the area because nearby you have the Tanjore Palace, which features later Nayak and Maratha art, complete with this very atmospheric underground passage beneath the complex.
Oh, the palace is gorgeous.
Yeah, and within the palace, you'll find the Saraswati Mahal Library, which is one of the oldest in Asia, housing these rare, ancient palm leaf manuscripts. It's an amazing city. But hold on, I need to stop you right there because the actual logistics of this temple are genuinely breaking my brain.
Okay, what part?
Well, you said the Brihadiswara temple is 66 meters tall, right? Built entirely of interlocking granite. And the record shows there is an 80-ton granite capstone sitting at the very top of that tower.
Yes, the Sikhara.
Right. So how on earth do you get an 80-ton rock 66 meters into the air in the year 1010 AD without a single crane?
That is the exact question that still keeps modern engineers awake at night. I mean, they had no pulleys capable of holding that kind of load, no modern surveying equipment. The staggering engineering theory, which is actually supported by archaeological evidence in the region, is that they used an inclined plane ramp.
Okay, a ramp, but an 80-ton rock.
Right, here is the catch. To get the angle shallow enough to actually physically move an 80-ton stone to a height of 66 meters, the ramp couldn't just be some steep hill leaning next to the temple. The gradient had to be incredibly gentle. It had to be around 6 degrees.
Wait, 6 degrees, which means that ramp had to be massive.
Oh, huge.
That is like building a modern, multi-lane interstate highway just to move a single piece of furniture.
That is a great way to put it. It is believed that this ramp stretched for several kilometers across the flat delta landscape. Just imagine the sheer human effort involved there. The volume of compacted earth and timber needed just to build the ramp itself.
Wow.
And then you have to coordinate thousands of laborers and teams of elephants to drag this massive stone on wooden rollers, literally inch by inch, for miles under the blistering South Indian sun.
And then what?
Well, once it was finally in place at the top, they had to completely dismantle the entire multi-kilometer ramp.
Yeah.
It's just a profound testament to a society operating at the absolute peak of organized wealth, labor, and collective will.
I mean, the sheer audacity it took to build that leaves a massive, almost unbearable psychological burden on the next generation. Like, if you are Rajendra Chola, the sun standing in the shadow of your father's masterpiece, a building that literally reshaped the horizon, how do you prove you are just as powerful?
You can't.
Right. You can't just build another tower. So the sun decides the answer is you cross an ocean and you build a completely new capital.
It is the ultimate display of ambition. So in 1025 AD, Rendra Chola Arda launched what is probably the most audacious naval campaign in Asian history. He sailed his massive fleet entirely across the Bay of Bengal to attack the Srivijaya Empire, which was located in modern-day Malaysia and Indonesia.
Just the logistics of feeding a navy across an ocean in the 11th century is terrifying.
Oh, it's a nightmare. But he didn't just survive the journey, he completely dominated. He brought the defeated kings back to India in chains. He brought their treasury back in his ships. And then, as if that just wasn't enough to prove his point, he brings back water from the Ganges River from his northern conquests, just to pour it into the well of his new capital city.
That is such a flex.
It really is.
Yeah.
He literally names the city Gangaikonda Cholapuram, which translates to the city of the king who took the Ganges. The scale of the victory had absolutely no precedent, so he built a monument to match it. This new city served as the heart of the Chola Empire for the next 250 years. From this exact spot in Tamil Nadu, they dictated the geopolitics of Southeast Asia. They controlled the highly lucrative trade routes passing through the Strait of Malacca.
But the contrast with what it looks like today is just mind-blowing to me. Like, if you visit Gangaikonda Cholapuram now, this massive world-conquering capital has been almost entirely reabsorbed by the Tamil Nadu countryside.
Yes.
It is basically just a quiet village. The palace foundations are totally buried under dirt. The temple just stands completely alone in this powerful, evocative solitude right in the middle of agricultural fields.
It really captures the imagination in a way that the bustling urban setting of Tanjavur doesn't quite manage. You are standing out there in a field looking at what was the epicenter of an ancient global superpower. And when you look at the temple itself, the art is widely considered the absolute pinnacle of Chola sculpture.
Yeah.
There is this incredibly rich repository of intricately carved deities. It includes the piety of a massive standing Nandi, the sacred bull, and the grace of the goddess Ganga. But there is one sculpture on the wall that is particularly significant.
The politically charged one, right?
Yes, exactly. It is this rare carving of the god Shiva, literally placing a crown of flowers directly onto King Rajendra the Affair's head. Now, in Indian temple iconography, this is extraordinarily rare. Usually, a mortal king is depicted bowing at the feet of the divine, or off to the side in a posture of submission.
Right, acknowledging their place.
Exactly. But a god directly crowning a mortal king. That is Rajendra claiming absolute divine legitimacy at the absolute height of his imperial power.
But, despite that massive ego, and I mean the ego required to cross an ocean, defeat an empire, and claim a god is actively crowning you is huge, there is this fascinating psychological tension in the architecture itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Rajendra built his new temple to converse with his father's temple. He gave the main tower a slightly concave, curvilinear contour, which is unlike those rigid, straight lines of his father's temple in Thanjavur. But he deliberately made it shorter than his father's temple.
Yes, he did.
To me, that is an incredible paradox. You have a man with an ego big enough to conquer across the ocean, but he has enough humility to literally bow his architecture to his father's legacy.
It adds such a deeply human story to these monumental stone structures. It shows us the profound cultural weight of filial piety in that era. Rajendra had to surpass his father militarily to prove his own worth, sure. But architecturally, he enshrined his deference in stone forever. He basically left a permanent record that said, I conquered the world, but I am still my father's son.
I love that. I really do. Okay, so we have the father's raw power in the 11th century, and then the son's audacious ocean-crossing tribute. Now we are moving into the 12th century to look at the third temple, the Airavitswar temple at Darasaram, and this was built by Raja Chola II Now, if the first two temples are about monumental scale, this one is entirely about microscopic technical perfection.
Durasurum really represents the Chola tradition at its most refined and delicate. Where the big temple commands awe through sheer vertical ambition, Aravateswar seduces you through detail. It is a much smaller complex, but the craftsmanship is just unparalleled.
I mean, the stone carving is so detailed that the individual jewels on the necklaces of the statues are perfectly rendered. It is like a master jeweler chiseled them out of granite.
It's amazing.
The stone actually looks like it's flowing fabric, but I think the most stunning feature is the mandapa. For anyone unfamiliar, the mandapa is the grand pillared entrance hall that leads up to the inner shrine. Here, it is carved to look like a giant stone chariot.
Yes, with wheels and everything.
Exactly. It has massive carved wheels and these galloping stone horses that are frozen in motion. It actually appears to float above the ground.
It is an absolute masterpiece of illusion and engineering. And the temple actually takes its name from Airavata, which is Lord Indra's mythical white elephant. According to the foundational legend of the site, Airavata was cursed with a loss of his pristine white color, but he was miraculously cured after bathing in the sacred tank right at this site.
So my question is, if the first two temples are about raw power and this monumental scale, what is the deeper so what of this smaller, intensely detailed chariot design? Like, why did the empire's architecture suddenly shift in this direction?
It is really about a major shift in the empire's internal priorities. By the 12th century, the era of massive sweeping conquests had largely stabilized. The borders were very secure, the wealth was steadily flowing in, so the focus naturally turned inward towards supreme spiritual refinement and incredibly dense theology.
Interesting.
The temple is no longer just a building designed to house a deity, you see. The architecture itself is a divine vehicle. The chariot mandapa actively expresses the celestial nature of the site. It represents the actual chariot of the gods being brought down to earth in stone.
Ah, so the building is moving. The building is the event itself.
Precisely. And this actually raises a crucial point about how you interact with these spaces today. The first two temples, they command awe simply by looking at them from a distance. Their colossal scale kind of does all the heavy lifting for you.
Right, you just look up and you're amazed.
Exactly. But Durashram requires an expert guide. The iconographic program, meaning the specific layout and the theological meaning of the statues, is so extraordinarily dense and elusive. If you don't know what you are looking at, you might just admire it as, well, beautiful decoration.
Yeah, you'd miss the whole point.
Totally. But with a guide to actually decode it for you, it becomes a complete theological and narrative statement about 12th century South Indian royal authority and the very nature of divine power.
It's like looking at the source code of an entire civilization, but the code happens to be carved into floating stone chariots.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it.
So for anyone listening who is ready to pack their bags and actually go decode this history in person, let's look at some practical takeaways, because if you want to do this complete 2-day tour starting from Chennai, timing is absolutely everything.
It really, really is. You have to plan this right. The absolute best time to go is from October to March. During those months, you have comfortable temperatures, clear skies, and really great light for photography.
And you absolutely must avoid the summer months from April to June. I cannot stress this enough.
Oh, definitely.
The heat in Tamil Nadu during that time can easily push above 40 degrees Celsius. And remember, these are active temples. You have to take your shoes off to walk around the exterior of these sacred spaces. Walking barefoot on sun-baked granite in 40-degree heat is genuinely exhausting.
It will burn your feet.
It really will. You do not want to spend your entire trip sprinting from shadow to shadow just trying to survive.
And beyond just the season, the time of day matters immensely too. To really truly appreciate these sites, you want a 6:30 a.m. start.
Early risers.
Yeah, that allows you to arrive at the temples during the golden hour. The early morning or even the late afternoon light hits that granite and gives it this warm, rich gold color. It casts these low-angle shadows that reveal the full three-dimensional depth of the sculptures.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, if you go at midday, the direct overhead light just flattens everything out and makes the stone look almost gray and dull.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You definitely want to see that 66-meter tower glowing in the golden hour. But as we wrap up this deep dive into the Chola dynasty, I want to leave you with a lingering thought. Think back to Gangaikonda Cholapuram, the city of the sun who conquered an ocean.
Right.
How does a capital city that ruled Southeast Asia for 250 years, a city filled with the treasury of defeated kings, just dissolve? How does it vanish back into farmland, leaving only a solitary temple standing in a field?
It is a profound reminder of the impermanence of even the greatest empires. Nature and time eventually reclaim almost everything we build.
It really is. It makes you wonder, as you walk through any quiet countryside anywhere in the world, just how much spectacular human history is lying buried right beneath your feet, just waiting for its own cinematic rediscovery. If you decide to travel to Tanjore or else here in India, we have a recommendation. Five Senses Tours organizes tours across India, which are immersive cultural experiences. You can email contact@fivesensestours.com. Note 5 is written as a numeral in contact at fivesensestours.com or WhatsApp to +919 845 677 446.